The Galactic Council chamber was silent. 1,000 alien representatives, gathered from every corner of the universe, sat in judgment. In the center of the grand hall, a single human stood, tall, unshaken, but surrounded by hostility. The species known as humanity is hereby exiled from the known galaxy, declared Supreme Chancellor Vorik, his deep voice echoing across the chamber. You are too unpredictable, too dangerous. Your refusal to submit to council rule proves that you are a threat to universal stability. The human Admiral Ethan Cole did not flinch. He had known this moment was coming. The council feared what they could not control. The truth was simple. Humanity had grown too strong, too fast. Their technology, their adaptability. It terrified the older species who had ruled for millennia. You may cast us out, Ethan said calmly, but do not think we will be forgotten. Vorik scoffed. Your worlds will be abandoned. Your colonies will be dismantled. You have no allies left. You will vanish into the dark, never to return. The final vote was cast. The decision was unanimous. Humanity was no longer welcome. Their trade rights were revoked, their star maps erased from galactic records. Patrol ships were sent to ensure that human vessels left known space. And so, Earth disappeared. For years, no one heard from them. No transmissions, no sightings, nothing. It was as if humanity had never existed. The galaxy moved on, convinced that the humans had perished in the unknown regions beyond the Council's reach. But then, whispers began. A merchant ship, traveling through the outer rim, picked up a strange signal, an encrypted message using an old human frequency. A rogue trader claimed he had seen massive structures being built in deep space, where no habitable worlds existed. A scout ship sent to investigate simply vanished. At first, the Council dismissed these rumors. Humanity was gone. Finished. There was no way they could have survived without Council support. But the whispers refused to die. Then, one day, an exploration vessel from the Solari Empire stumbled upon something impossible. It was deep in an uncharted system, far from any known trade routes. The ship's sensors picked up strange energy readings, unlike anything in recorded history. The captain, a veteran explorer named Tivon, ordered a closer scan. And that was when they saw it. A station. No, not just a station. A structure so large it defied logic. It floated in the dark void, its surface smooth, black, and cold. The design was unfamiliar, yet there was something hauntingly human about it. Tivon's crew sent a probe closer. The moment it neared the station, all their systems flickered. The ship's lights dimmed. Their communications went silent. Then, without warning, a signal burst through their speakers. You should not have come. The voice was unmistakably human. Panic spread through the ship. The crew tried to turn back, to escape, but something was wrong. Their engines refused to ignite. It was as if an unseen force held them in place. Then, out of the darkness, shapes began to emerge. Massive ships, sleek and terrifying, with no visible weapons but an unmistakable aura of power. Their hulls bore no insignia, no markings of any known faction. And yet, Tivon knew. The humans had not died. They had not vanished. They had been building. News of the encounter spread quickly. The Exilari Empire tried to cover it up, but it was too late. Other factions sent their own scouts, their own spies. Each one returned with the same chilling report. Humanity was alive, and they had created something beyond imagination. The Galactic Council convened an emergency meeting. Fear gripped the chamber. If humanity had survived, if they had been preparing in secret for all these years, what had they become? Supreme Chancellor Vorik looked at the gathered leaders, his face grim. We made a mistake, he admitted. We thought we had ended them. Instead, we have created something worse. A deep silence followed his words. Then an urgent transmission came through, straight from the outer rim. The patrol fleet had been sent to investigate the anomaly. They had just arrived near the human sector. The last message they sent before going dark was simple. They are waiting for us. And then, nothing. The humans were not just alive. They were ready. The Galactic Council could no longer ignore the truth. Humanity had survived. Not only that, but they had built something vast, something powerful. The whispers had turned into undeniable evidence. Entire scouting fleets had gone missing, and the few transmissions that managed to escape the dead zone all carried the same chilling message. Humanity was waiting. The Council acted swiftly, assembling an elite war fleet to venture into the unknown. They refused to believe that an exiled species could pose a true threat. The fleet was led by Admiral Karvok of the Jundari Dominion, a seasoned warrior who had crushed countless rebellions. To him, this mission was a simple reminder to humanity that they were nothing in the grand scheme of the universe. With over 100 warships under his command, he was confident that any remaining humans would surrender or be wiped out. As they entered the uncharted sector, their ship's sensors immediately picked up distortions, energy readings that made no sense. Space itself seemed to tremble around them. The deeper they pushed, the more uneasy the crew became. There were no planets, no stations, no debris, just an endless void, silent and oppressive. Then, without warning, the fleet's long-range communications cut out. Panic rippled through the ships. Karvok barked orders, demanding status reports, but no one had an answer. It was as if something had severed their connection to the rest of the galaxy. And then the lights flickered. A low hum resonated through the warships, a vibration that felt like it was coming from the fabric of space itself. That was when the first ship vanished. There was no explosion, no distress signal. One moment it was there, fully operational, shields active, weapons primed. The next, it was gone. No debris, no energy signature, nothing. Karvok's blood ran cold. He ordered all ships to fall back, but before they could turn, another warship disappeared. Then another. A sense of dread gripped the fleet as they realized they weren't in control. They had walked into a trap. Out of the darkness, shapes began to emerge. At first, they were barely visible, blending into the void like shadows. But as they drew closer, their forms became clear. Massive vessels, larger than anything the Council had ever seen, with hulls blacker than space itself. They moved without sound, without visible propulsion. The only illumination came from a faint, eerie glow pulsating along their edges, as if the ships were alive. Karvok gave the order to fire. The fleet unleashed a full barrage, plasma cannons, ion torpedoes, high-yield warheads. The void lit up with deadly energy. And yet, the human ships remained untouched. The weapons never reached them. Some were absorbed, others simply vanished. It was as if reality itself was bending around these unknown warships. Then, for the first time, a transmission came through. It was not a threat, not a demand. Just a single sentence, spoken in a calm, measured voice. "You should have left us alone." And then the attack began. The human ships moved unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. They didn't maneuver in traditional patterns, didn't follow the physics of known spaceflight. They flickered in and out of existence, shifting positions in an instant. Within seconds, half of Karvok's fleet was disabled, their systems fried by invisible forces. The remaining ships tried to escape, but space itself seemed to work against them. Engines failed, navigational data became meaningless, and the void stretched infinitely before them, trapping them in a maze they could not escape. Karvok realized, far too late, that this was not a battle. This was a demonstration. The humans had no interest in destruction. They wanted the Council to see, to understand. And then, as suddenly as they had appeared, the human ships withdrew. The remaining Council vessels, crippled and powerless, were left drifting. A final message was transmitted across all channels, echoing in every language of the known galaxy. "You exiled us. Now you will see what we have become." The transmission ended. The war fleet was allowed to leave, but the message had been delivered. Humanity was not only alive, they were beyond anything the galaxy had ever imagined. The Council fleet limped back to known space, their ships barely functional, their crews silent with fear. What they had seen was beyond comprehension. The battle had not been a battle at all. It had been a warning. Humanity had evolved into something else, something the galaxy had never encountered before. Supreme Chancellor Vorik watched as the battered fleet arrived at the capital system, his expression unreadable. Reports poured in, each one more terrifying than the last. Weapons had failed, ships had disappeared, and the laws of physics themselves had seemed to break in humanity's presence. Meetings were held behind closed doors. The Council's greatest minds analyzed the data, searching for an explanation, a weakness, anything that could make sense of what had happened. But there was no logic, no pattern to follow. Humanity had vanished into the void for years, and in that time, they had built something beyond the Council's understanding. Some theorized that they had discovered lost technology from an ancient civilization. Others whispered of something even worse, something unnatural. The galaxy was in a state of panic. If the humans had truly mastered whatever new power they wielded, what did that mean for the balance of the universe? Some species called for immediate action, for war before humanity could strike first. Others urged caution, terrified of provoking a force they could not control. The debates raged for days, but no decision was reached. The Council had always been the ultimate authority in the galaxy, but for the first time, they were faced with an enemy they could not dominate. Then, an unexpected event changed everything. A distress signal, weak but unmistakable, was detected near the outer rim. It was a Council outpost, one that had been monitoring human space in secret. The signal was brief, only a few seconds long, but the message was clear. They are coming. And then, silence. The Council scrambled to respond. A fleet was dispatched immediately, but by the time they arrived, the outpost was gone. Not destroyed. Gone. There was no wreckage, no debris, no sign that a station had ever existed. It was as if the entire structure had been erased from reality. The only thing left behind was a single transmission, looping endlessly on an open frequency. We warned you. Fear spread like wildfire. If humanity could make entire stations disappear, what else were they capable of? The Council had thought they had cast humanity into the darkness, but now, it seemed, the darkness belonged to them. The question was no longer whether humanity would return. It was when. The Galactic Council was no longer debating. They were preparing. The disappearance of the outpost had shattered any illusion that humanity was merely a rogue faction hiding in the void. They were something else now, something that defied all logic. The most powerful species in the galaxy, those who had ruled for millennia, found themselves afraid of the very civilization they had cast out. The Council convened an emergency meeting, and for the first time in history, every major empire sent their highest-ranking leaders. It was no longer a question of politics or power. This was survival. Supreme Chancellor Vorik stood before the assembly, his usual arrogance replaced with grim determination. "We have underestimated them," he admitted, his voice echoing through the grand chamber. "Humanity has changed. They have technology beyond our comprehension. And now, they have made it clear they are not bound by our rules." The room remained silent. No one argued. No one scoffed. They had all seen the reports. They had all heard the transmissions. Admiral Karvok, still recovering from the disaster at the human border, stepped forward. His once unshakable confidence was gone. "We don't know how they are doing this," he said, his voice heavy. "They make our ships vanish. They manipulate space itself. We fire, and nothing reaches them. They are not just advanced. They are untouchable." The silence grew heavier. For years, the Council had believed themselves invincible. They had crushed rebellions, destroyed entire species that refused to submit. They had been the gods of the galaxy. But now, they had met something greater, something that looked at their mighty fleets and saw only prey. A proposal was put forth. Some believed a preemptive strike was the only option, even if they had no idea how to fight humanity's new power. Others argued for negotiation, but how could they negotiate when the humans had made no demands? They had not asked for territory. They had not asked for resources. They had simply returned, watching and waiting. Then, just as the debate reached its peak, a new transmission arrived. Not intercepted, not discovered, it was sent directly to the Council's core network. Every security measure had failed to block it. The message played across every screen, in every language, on every world under the Council's control. A single figure stood in the darkness, illuminated only by the faint glow of unseen machinery. His face was unmistakably human, but his eyes, they were something else. Cold, calculating, beyond anything that could be called fear. When he spoke, his voice was calm, almost emotionless. "You exiled us. You abandoned us in the void." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "And we survived." The council leaders watched in horror as, behind the man, massive structures flickered into view. Colossal stations, impossibly vast shipyards, fleets larger than any ever recorded. "You believed we needed your approval to thrive." The man continued. "You believed we would fade into nothing." He took a step forward, his gaze unblinking. "But we did not fade. We did not fall. We built." The image shifted, and the screen filled with the sight of an armada, black, sleek, and unlike anything the Council had ever seen. The sheer scale was unimaginable. And then the final words came, spoken with quiet certainty. "We are coming." And then the transmission cut out. Panic erupted across the chamber. Some screamed for immediate mobilization. Others demanded to know how the humans had accessed their systems so easily. But deep down, every leader in that room understood one terrible truth. This was no longer their galaxy. Humanity had returned. The galaxy held its breath. The message from humanity had spread like wildfire, and no species, no empire, could ignore it. Fear gripped the Council worlds. The mighty empires that had ruled for millennia now realized they were standing on the edge of something far greater than any war they had ever fought. This was not just about military strength. Humanity had demonstrated something far more terrifying: control. No one knew when or where they would strike. The Council had deployed fleets across every major sector, yet no human ships had been detected. No planets had been invaded. The silence was unbearable. Every admiral, every commander, every ruler knew that humanity could attack at any moment, and they would not see it coming. The unknown was worse than any battle. Then the disappearances began. It started with minor outposts, stations on the edges of space, quietly vanishing without a trace. No distress signals, no wreckage, nothing. Soon, entire colonies went dark. Planets with billions of inhabitants simply ceased communication overnight. The Council's fleets scrambled to investigate, only to find emptiness. There were no signs of battle, no destruction, no evidence that anyone had ever lived there. It was as if reality itself had erased them. Paranoia consumed the ruling species. Every system was placed under martial law. Military patrols tripled. Defensive grids operated at full power, but it didn't matter. The disappearances continued. The Council's best scientists searched for an explanation. Some believed humanity had discovered a way to manipulate space-time itself, folding reality around them. Others whispered of something darker. The humans had evolved beyond physical existence, becoming something no longer bound by the limits of flesh and metal. No theory was comforting. Then, without warning, a human vessel appeared in open space. Just one. It was unlike anything the Council had ever encountered. A construct of shifting black metal, its form constantly warping as if it refused to obey the rules of physics. Every weapon locked onto it. Every fleet prepared to fire. But before a single shot was fired, a voice echoed through every channel. in every language, across every fleet, planet, and station in the Council's reach. You are afraid. Good. The ship vanished. It had not jumped to hyperspace. It had not cloaked. It had simply ceased to exist, just as the outposts and colonies had. And with that, the Council understood. This was no longer a war. This was a lesson. Humanity was teaching them what it felt like to be powerless. For the first time in history, the rulers of the galaxy were no longer the hunters. They were the prey. The Council was unraveling. The greatest empires in the galaxy, the rulers of countless worlds, now lived in constant fear. Fleets patrolled empty space, searching for an enemy that refused to be found. Every leader, every admiral, every scientist knew the truth. They were fighting something beyond their understanding. Humanity had not just advanced. They had become something else entirely. The disappearances had stopped, but the silence was worse. Entire sectors had been abandoned. Worlds once teeming with life now floated in darkness, untouched yet lifeless. The Council's best minds struggled for answers, but there were none. Humanity was making a point, and they were doing it with terrifying precision. Then, without warning, a message arrived, one that sent a shudder through the galaxy. The judgment begins. Panic spread like wildfire. What did it mean? Was this an ultimatum? A warning? No one knew, and that uncertainty made it all the more terrifying. The Council held emergency meetings, but their discussions were meaningless. There was no negotiation, no diplomacy, no demands. Humanity had spoken in actions, not words. And then, the First Fleet fell. A battle group of 500 ships, stationed at the edge of known space, simply ceased to exist. No distress calls, no wreckage, no survivors. One moment they were there. The next, they were gone. The Council sent another fleet to investigate, but when they arrived, they found something impossible. The ships had returned, but they were empty. Vessels once filled with tens of thousands of warriors drifted in eerie silence, fully functional yet completely abandoned. The Council's forces hesitated to board, but curiosity overcame fear. When they stepped inside, they found no signs of struggle, no bodies, no damage, just the faint hum of systems still running as if waiting for their crews to return. Then, the whispers started. Communications officers reported hearing voices, soft, distant, familiar. Some heard their lost crewmates calling their names. Others heard loved ones they had not spoken to in years. Some collapsed in horror, screaming about things no one else could hear. Others simply vanished, their armor and weapons dropping to the floor as if they had never existed. The investigation fleets fled, leaving the ghostly armada behind. Humanity had made its next move, and it was something worse than war. They were breaking the minds of the most powerful species in the galaxy. The Council was no longer worried about battle. They were terrified of what came next. The galaxy had reached its breaking point. The greatest empires, once unshakable in their dominance, now trembled in fear. Entire fleets refused to leave their home systems. Planets fortified themselves, but for what? Humanity had not invaded. They had not made demands. They had simply unmade everything the Council had built, without firing a single shot. Across the core worlds, paranoia consumed the ruling species. High-ranking officials disappeared overnight. Some were found days later, sitting in their chambers, staring at nothing, whispering about voices only they could hear. Others simply ceased to exist, as if they had never been born. The most powerful minds in the galaxy were breaking under the weight of something they could not understand. Then the final message came. It arrived not through intercepted transmissions or stolen data, but directly into the minds of every leader, every admiral, every scientist who had once ruled over humanity. A voice, cold and absolute, echoed through their thoughts. Your time is over. Screens across the galaxy flickered to life, showing something that shattered whatever illusions of power the Council still clung to. The human fleet had arrived. But these were not mere warships. They were monoliths, vast, shifting constructs of black metal and impossible geometry, moving through space as if they were extensions of reality itself. Some defied the laws of physics entirely, flickering in and out of existence, vanishing and reappearing in different locations, as though space itself bent to their will. Planets raised their shields. Defense grids locked onto the incoming armada. Every remaining fleet in the galaxy prepared to fire. But before a single shot could be launched, the human vessels changed. The towering dreadnoughts and sleek cruisers twisted, their forms shifting like living shadows. And then, before the eyes of the entire galaxy, they became the fleets of the Council. Every empire saw their own ships reflected in the human armada. Every admiral, every soldier watching in horror realized the truth. Humanity had studied them, learned from them, become them. The Council fleets hesitated. The fear of the unknown was one thing, but the fear of facing an enemy that was them, yet greater in every way, was something else entirely. A single human ship moved forward, drifting toward the Council's strongest defensive station. It did not fire. It did not attack. It simply approached, and then, without a sound, the massive station began to collapse in on itself, crushed, as if the very fabric of space had turned against it. There was no explosion, no wreckage, only absence. The Council's last defense was gone. One final message echoed through every world, every ship, every mind that had once ruled over humanity's fate. You cast us out. You left us in the void, but we did not perish. We became the void. And then, as silently as they had arrived, the human fleet disappeared. The war was over before it had even begun.